Imagine going to the pharmacy to try and soothe some incredibly painful torn skin, right? And the gentle product you end up buying is actually chemically identical to pouring salt on a slug.
Yeah, which is just, it's a horrifying thought.
Right. But if you are navigating lichen sclerosus, the clinical data we're looking at says that is exactly what is probably sitting in your bathroom cabinet right now. So welcome to today's deep dive.
We are so glad you're here.
We're talking directly to you today because, well, while this topic is highly specific, getting it right is literally the difference between daily agony and actually reclaiming your quality of life.
Absolutely. It's huge.
Our mission today is to extract the most crucial, uncompromising facts from a really tall stack of medical guidelines. I mean, we've got clinical data from the British Association of Dermatologists, patient care protocols from NHS trusts.
Which are incredibly detailed, by the way.
Oh, very. And we've also got specialized insights from dedicated women's health clinics. And we're using all of this data to answer one vital question. What lubricants are actually safe when you have lichen sclerosus?
It's a conversation that desperately needs to happen, outside of those rushed, 5-minute doctor's appointments.
Yeah, you barely have time to sit down.
Exactly. There's just so much silence and really outdated advice surrounding vulval health. It leaves people to figure out these complex dermatological interactions entirely on their own.
Which is so unfair. Because if you are living with LS, you already know the physical reality. You know exactly what it feels like when the skin of the vulva becomes white and incredibly thin.
Yeah.
Like the British Association of Dermatologists describes it as looking like wrinkled tissue paper.
Which is a very accurate visual, but it doesn't quite capture the reality, does it?
No, not at all. It doesn't capture the severe, unrelenting itch or, the agony of those tiny micro tears and fissures that seem to happen just from, moving the wrong way.
And that extreme tissue fragility, that right there brings us to the absolute core of the problem. Because when someone with LS experiences dryness or painful sex, the standard, well-meaning medical advice is almost universally just use lube.
Right, just use lube. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because digging into our sources reveals that this casual piece of advice is actually a massive, dangerous trap.
A huge trap.
The data shows that if you just walk into a pharmacy and grab a popular, best-selling personal lubricant off the shelf, you are highly likely to trigger a severe flare-up.
Yeah, you're basically throwing gasoline on a fire.
Exactly. So to understand what you actually should be putting on your body, we first have to understand why this specific skin is reacting like a powder keg to everyday products.
Right. And to understand that, it really comes down to a physiological mechanism that's mentioned in the dermatology guidelines. It's called the Koebner response.
Okay, wait, the Koebner response. I've seen that term in psoriasis literature, actually.
Ah, yes.
Where a simple scratch on your arm suddenly turns into a brand new psoriatic plaque. Is lichen sclerosus doing the same thing?
It is exactly the same concept, yes.
So if the tissue experiences friction, does it just assume it's under attack and send a localized immune freak out to that exact spot?
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it, honestly. In conditions like lichen sclerosus, the disease process is actively looking for an excuse to flare.
Wow.
The skin is already existing in this state of high alert. So when you introduce friction, and that could be from tight seams on your clothing, wiping after using the bathroom, or sexual intimacy, the immune system essentially sounds a massive alarm.
It panics.
It panics. It accelerates the inflammatory disease process right at the site of that mechanical stress. That is the Koebner response in action.
Okay, so if healthy skin is like a sturdy canvas, LS skin is like wet tissue paper.
Yes, perfect analogy.
You can't just slap harsh chemical paint on wet tissue paper, add friction, and expect it to hold its structural integrity.
It's going to disintegrate.
Right. But looking at the products that are specifically marketed and sold for, quote-unquote, intimate use,
Yeah.
why are they causing so much intense pain for people with LS?
What's fascinating here, and honestly a bit maddening, is the complete disconnect between the consumer market and medical reality.
Oh, tell me about it.
Because many of the most popular, highly marketed lubricants, they're formulated specifically to be fun or enhancing.
Right.
So they plaster words like Warming, tingling, cooling, or flavored all over the bright packaging.
Yeah, you see those occupying like the entire middle shelf of the pharmacy aisle. They treat it like a candy store.
They really do. But the mechanisms used to create those novel sensations, they are aggressive. I mean, manufacturers rely on artificial fragrances to mask chemical odors, first of all.
Right.
Then they use menthol to create that artificial cooling effect. And to get a warming sensation, they frequently use capsaicin-type stimulants.
Wait, hang on. Capsaicin, as in the chemical compound that gives chili peppers their heat.
That is exactly what it is, literally chili pepper extract.
Hold on. They were putting capsaicin, the chemical weapon of the chili pepper, into these products.
Yes, they are.
Applying chili pepper derivatives to skin that the dermatologists literally describe as fragile, torn tissue paper. I mean, that isn't just a nightmare. That sounds like a medieval torture method.
It is. It genuinely acts as a severe chemical irritant. For someone managing lichen sclerosus or, a related condition like genitourinary syndrome of menopause.
Right, GSM.
Exactly. Applying these active botanical stimulants to an already tender vestibule, which is the very entrance of the vagina, it's just asking for a massive inflammatory cascade.
I can't even imagine the pain.
It's awful. And the Women's Health Clinic guidelines point out that the posterior fourchette, that's the very bottom of the vaginal opening where those agonizing microtears usually happen, it is highly permeable.
Oh, so it just absorbs everything immediately.
Yes, so applying menthol or capsaicin there frequently triggers a secondary contact dermatitis reaction.
Okay, so let me get this straight. The original problem was a micro tear from the LS. But now, because of the fun lube you bought, you've gifted yourself an itchy, burning allergic rash right on top of it.
And that rash could last for hours or even days. You are exponentially compounding the tissue trauma.
Good grief.
Because, think about it, the Kovner response gets triggered by the friction, and then the contact dermatitis gets triggered by the chemical additives. It's a double whammy.
Right, so the fun, tingly, flavored lubes are definitively out. Do not put menthol on broken skin. I mean, that tracks logically.
Very logically.
So if these active botanical ingredients are triggering that massive alarm bell, it completely explains why patients instinctively run toward products on the other side of the aisle.
Right, the ones that look safer.
Yeah, the ones explicitly labeled gentle or natural or sensitive.
Exactly.
But, looking at the UB doctor's note we have here, those simple formulas are actually hiding a massive Trojan horse. So we really need to talk about glycerin.
We absolutely do. Glycerin, which, by the way, is also listed as glycerol on many European labels, it is ubiquitous.
It's in everything.
If you look at the ingredients of a standard, quote-unquote, sensitive water-based lubricant, glycerin is very frequently the second or third ingredient listed right after water.
Okay, let me push back on this a bit, though.
Yeah.
Because I see glycerin praised in dermatology all the time.
Oh, sure, in facial skin care.
Exactly. It's in my daily face moisturizer. Dermatologists love it for the face because it's a humectant, right? It's supposed to pull moisture into the skin to keep it hydrated.
Right.
So why does a hydrating ingredient suddenly become the ultimate villain when we move from the face to vulval health?
See, this raises a really important question, and it perfectly highlights how different the semi-mucosal environment of the vulva is compared to the skin on your face.
Okay.
First, let's look at why manufacturers use glycerin in the first place.
Why do they?
Well, it creates a very slick, slippery feel. It is incredibly cheap to produce. And as a humectant, it prevents the product from drying out while it sits under those hot fluorescent lights on a store shelf for 2 years.
Oh. So it's an economic choice for the manufacturer. It's not a biological choice for the user's health.
Exactly. The scientific problem with using it down there lies in a concept called hyperosmolarity.
Hyperosmolarity. Wait, if it's hyperosmolar, doesn't that mean it's so dense with solutes that it literally acts like a sponge?
Oh, yes, that's exactly what it means.
So it's not moisturizing the cells. It's sucking the water right out of them to balance the equation.
That is the precise mechanism. I mean, basic osmosis dictates that water will always move across a cell membrane toward the higher concentration of solutes.
Right, back to high school biology.
Exactly. Now, the skin on your face has a thick stratum corneum, an outer layer, and it's exposed to the open air. So a humectant there can draw ambient moisture from the air into the skin.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the vulval and vaginal tissues are different. They are semi-mucosal and internal or enclosed. When you apply a hyperosmolar lubricant heavily loaded with glycerin into that environment, there is no air moisture to draw from.
Oh, no.
So the glycerin pulls water osmotically out of your delicate cells and into the lubricant itself.
Wow, it's literally like pouring salt on a cucumber.
That is a perfect, if slightly horrifying way to put it.
You think you're adding a liquid barrier, but you're just dehydrating the tissue from the inside out.
Right. In the immediate short term, it feels slick. But the biological aftermath is severe rebound dryness. And with repeated use, the UBI documentation notes that this osmotic pull actually causes microscopic tissue damage.
Microscopic damage.
Yes, you are physically weakening the cellular walls of skin that is already heavily compromised by the lichen sclerosus.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because cellular dehydration alone doesn't explain the secondary infections that the NHS guidelines keep warning about.
No, it doesn't.
There's a biological side effect to the glycerin itself, isn't there? Dehydration is only half the threat.
It really is. The secondary issue is what glycerin structural is. Chemically speaking, it is a sugar alcohol.
Okay.
And what biological organism thrives on sugar?
Oh, yeast.
Yeast,
It's a feeding ground.
a literal buffet. The clinical guidelines note that patients with lichen sclerosus are already highly susceptible to thrush-like flares simply because the skin barrier is already compromised.
Right, the immune defense is down.
Exactly. A healthy vaginal microbiome relies on a really delicate, slightly acidic balance maintained by lactobacillus bacteria.
The good bacteria.
Yes. But when you introduce a dense, sugar-based compound like glycerin, you are essentially setting up an all-you-can-eat buffet for yeast. You alter the pH, you disrupt the protective lactobacillus, and you invite serious, itchy fungal infections.
Which is the absolute last thing you want when you're already dealing with the intense, localized itching from the LS itself.
It's a nightmare scenario.
So we've basically eliminated a massive portion of the market here. No flavors, no warming or cooling agents, no fragrances, and absolutely no glycerin or sugar alcohols like propylene glycol.
None of them.
What is actually left? I mean, when you have lichen sclerosus, what are the safe bets?
The medical consensus is very strict, but it does leave us with some excellent options. A safe lubricant for lichen sclerosus must meet 4 specific criteria.
Okay, write these down, folks. What are they?
1, it must be glycerin-free. 2, it must be low osmolar or isoosmolar.
Meaning the fluid concentration matches the natural fluid concentration of your body's cells, so there is no osmotic pull, right?
Exactly. No salt on a cucumber. 3, it must be pH balanced specifically for vaginal use. And 4, it must be 100% fragrance-free.
Okay, so let's look at the specific bases you can choose from, starting with water-based lubricants. The sources say these are great for overall versatility, assuming they pass that 4-point criteria test.
Yes. A high-quality isoosmolar water-based lubricant is incredibly versatile. It is chemically safe to use with all types of condoms, and it won't degrade silicone pelvic floor dilators or toys.
Which is really important for a lot of people managing this.
Very important. But the absolute key here is reading the INCI list. That's the International Nomenclature Ingredient List printed on the back of the bottle.
Right.
You want to see water, a plant-based thickener like aloe or cellulose, maybe a natural preservative, and almost nothing else.
Basically, if the ingredient list reads like a novel, put it back on the shelf.
Exactly.
Minimal ingredients equal minimal risk of triggering the immune system. But what if a water-based lube just isn't cutting it?
Yeah.
Because they can dry out faster.
They can, yes.
And the Women's Health Clinic guidelines highlight a second option that they highly recommend for people dealing with intense, localized friction pain, and that's silicone-based lubricants.
Silicone is a stellar option for LS patients. It really is.
Why is it better in some cases?
Well, unlike water-based products, medical-grade silicone is composed of very large molecules that physically cannot absorb into the skin, and they do not evaporate into the air.
Oh, okay.
So the silicone sits entirely on top of the tissue, providing an inert, slippery barrier. This means it offers the longest, most durable glide possible.
That makes total sense.
Right. For someone with a highly tender vestibule, or someone who is working with vaginal dilators to overcome the tightness or structural scarring that LS often causes, silicone drastically reduces the mechanical friction that triggers that Koebner response.
It provides that crucial slip without the friction of constant reapplication, which is a big deal.
A huge deal.
Now, I want to bring in a massive flashing warning sign here, based on the NHS Lothian and Leeds Teaching Hospitals guidelines.
Yes, this is crucial.
Because we've been talking about lubricants for intimacy, but the dermatologists also explicitly require using heavy emollients for daily disease management.
And this is a vital distinction that often gets confused by patients. Emollients and lubricants serve completely different structural purposes in LS management.
Right. The guidelines suggest using thick, greasy emollients, things like hydromol ointment, Cetraben, pure Vaseline, or like a 50-50 mix of white and liquid paraffin.
Yes, those are standard.
And you use these as a gentle soap substitute for washing because actual soap strips the skin. And you use them as a barrier cream throughout the day.
Exactly. They sit on the tissue and protect the fragile vulval skin from the acidity of urine and sweat, which, by the way, can sting broken skin horribly.
Oh, I can imagine. So they're great for that. But UT, and this is the huge safety warning the NHS highlights, these thick ointments are oil-based.
Yes.
And oil degrades latex instantly.
Instantly.
Like if you use an emollient like petroleum jelly or an oil-based paraffin ointment anywhere near a latex condom, it chemically breaks down the latex and the condom can fail in seconds.
It literally melts it. It's incredibly dangerous if you're relying on them for STI or pregnancy prevention.
So the rule to keep straight: heavy oil-based emollients for daily washing and barrier protection, but stick exclusively to specialized water-based or silicone-based lubricants for intimacy or condom use.
A very, very necessary distinction. You are managing the skin's health, but you cannot compromise sexual safety and efficacy to do it.
Okay, so we've navigated the ingredient minefield. You found a safe, isoosmolar, water-based, or a high-quality silicone lube. You know not to use Vaseline with condoms.
Right.
But the clinical sources emphasize that just owning the right product is only half the battle. How and where you apply it drastically alters the pain response.
This is a mechanical point where a lot of people struggle simply because they haven't been given proper anatomical guidance by their doctors.
They just aren't told.
No. And the Women's Health Clinic specifically notes that many people default to only applying lubricant internally, high up in the vaginal canal.
Right, because that's what we see in the media or assume.
Exactly. But if you have lichen sclerosus, the internal vaginal canal isn't usually where the disease is active. LS is primarily a disease of the vulva, the outside.
The actual hotspot, the vestibule.
Yes. The soreness, the architectural changes, the tearing, the friction pain, that is all happening right at the entrance.
Okay.
So your application strategy has to change to match the pathology. Before any friction-heavy activity, you need to deliberately apply a pea-sized amount of your safe lubricant directly around the vestibule. So that's the tissue immediately surrounding the opening.
Right.
And specifically, press it onto the posterior fourchette at the bottom of the opening.
Because that's where it tears the most. And the clinical data says that just changing this one mechanical habit, targeting the entrance rather than just internal application, is proven to significantly reduce those agonizing paper-cut splits that happen during or after intimacy.
It creates a dedicated protective buffer exactly where the skin is under the most intense mechanical stretching and stress.
Now let's talk about the daily routine. Because if you have lichen sclerosus, you aren't just using lubricants and emollients.
No, you've usually got a prescription too.
Right. The medical gold standard for treating the actual autoimmune disease process, halting the scarring and shutting down the inflammation, is a very potent topical steroid ointment.
Yes.
Usually they prescribe something like clobetasol propionate.
Which is a highly effective, absolutely crucial medication for halting the progression of the disease.
But how do you juggle the pharmacy on your nightstand?
It gets complicated.
Right. If you have to put on a steroid ointment to treat the disease, but you also need to use a greasy emollient to protect the skin from urine, and maybe a silicone lubricant later for intimacy, how do you layer all this without ruining the medical treatment? Do you just like mix it all together into a paste?
Definitely do not do that. If we connect this to the bigger picture of dermal absorption, layering these products is a very precise science. You absolutely cannot apply them all at once. The stratum corneum, again, the outer layer of your skin, needs uninterrupted time to process the active steroid molecules.
Oh, I see.
If you put a heavy emollient or a silicone lubricant on first, you create a waterproof barrier.
Right, because that's what they're designed to do.
Exactly. So if you put your steroid on top of that barrier, the medication physically cannot reach the skin cells. It is entirely blocked.
That makes intuitive sense. You're trying to paint a wall without taking down the wallpaper first.
Brilliant analogy, yes.
But what if you reverse it? What if you put the steroid on and then immediately cover it with a thick emollient or a silicone lube?
That's also a problem. You create a chemical suspension.
A suspension.
Yeah. If you apply the steroid and immediately rub a large amount of emollient or lubricant over it, you physically lift the active medication off the tissue.
Oh, wow.
You dilute it within the new substance, and you inadvertently spread it away from the specific areas of active disease that desperately need the medication.
So you're just smearing it everywhere else.
Right, which reduces the efficacy where you actually need it.
So what does this all mean for the actual daily schedule? When do you put what on?
The clinical sources outline a very specific, non-negotiable timeline rule.
Okay, here we go.
Always apply your prescription steroid ointment first, directly to the clean, dry areas of active LS skin.
Got it.
Then, and this is the crucial physiological step, you must wait at least 15 to 30 minutes.
15 to 30 minutes. Why that specific window?
Because it takes approximately that long for the steroid to fully penetrate the stratum corneum and sink deep enough into the dermis where it won't be disturbed by topical interference.
He needs time to soak in.
Exactly. Only after that 15 to 30-minute window has safely passed should you apply your daily emollient barrier cream.
Okay.
And of course, your safe, glycerin-free lubricants can be used generously whenever needed for activities involving friction, provided you've allowed that crucial window for your medical treatments to fully absorb first.
It's all about respecting the dermal absorption mechanism. You have to give the skin the time it needs to process the medication before you add the structural protective layers.
Precisely.
Well, we have covered a massive and incredibly vital amount of ground today. Let's recap the essential toolkit for anyone navigating life and intimacy with lichen sclerosus.
First and foremost, you must protect the tissue from the Koebner response. Mechanical friction is not just uncomfortable, it actively commands the immune system to worsen the disease at that specific site.
To stop that friction safely, you have to become an absolute expert at reading ingredient labels. Do not trust the word sensitive on the front of the box.
Never.
Turn it around. Avoid the traps. No glycerin. No sugars or just sugar alcohols. No fun botanical additives like menthol, capsaicin, or artificial fragrances.
They aren't fun.
No. Those ingredients are hyperosmolar. They pull water out of your already fragile cells, weaken the cell walls, and feed yeast, setting you up for contact dermatitis and thrush.
Instead, rely on products with a very short, clinically sound ingredient list. A clean, iso-osmolar water-based lubricant is great for everyday versatility and toy use.
Right.
Or a high-quality medical-grade silicone-based lubricant is excellent for providing the longest-lasting glide, as it sits right on top of the skin, offering the ultimate reduction in mechanical friction.
And remember, anatomical placement matters just as much as the product itself. Don't just apply internally. Protect the hot spot.
Yes, the vestibule.
Right. Apply a pea-sized amount directly to the highly sensitive vestibule entrance and the posterior fourchette at the base of the opening to actively prevent those painful micro-tears.
And finally, respect the timeline of your medical treatments. Steroid ointments always go on clean, dry skin first.
You believe that mandatory 15 to 30 minutes?
Yes. For deep dermal absorption, and only then can you safely layer your oil-based emollients or use your specialized lubricants without accidentally diluting or blocking your medication.
You know, digging through all these clinical guidelines and dermatological warnings today, there is a wild disconnect that really stands out to me.
What's that?
Well, we have a massive multi-billion-dollar wellness industry out there that just thrives on marketing words like gentle, intimate, and natural.
Oh, absolutely.
Yet the products explicitly marketed with those soothing words are legally allowed to be packed with high osmolarity ingredients, like glycerin, that are actively scientifically proven to damage delicate microbiomes and forcefully pull water out of vulnerable human cells.
It is a stark reminder that marketing copy on a box is designed by corporations to sell a product.
Yeah.
It is not designed by doctors to protect your cellular biology. In this specific arena, the burden of safety and chemical knowledge falls entirely on the consumer.
Which brings us to a final challenge for you, the listener. Take a look at your own bathroom cabinet tonight.
Yeah, go check right now.
Look at the products you use on your body's most sensitive, vulnerable skin. How much trust are you blindly putting into a label that promises a natural, gentle experience when the actual scientific ingredient list printed on the back might be quietly working against your body's natural biology?
It's definitely something to think about.
It's a question worth asking and an ingredient list worth reading. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and remember to always keep questioning what you're told.